Hey all you cool cats and kittens, welcome back to Remote Learning with Miss Corwin. You can see here we have new slides because we are in a new phase of our writing process. We are now in the editing phase. So, congratulations, you have finished your first drafts of your story and I've read through them and they're so interesting and so good. And now it's time to start editing. And editing is an important part of writing because it helps us to tell the best stories that we possibly can. It makes those good stories into great stories. So, where should we start first? And I figured that we should start with writing what's called strong verbs. So, what do I mean by strong verbs? Well, as you write, you should pay particular attention to the words you add to your writing. Good authors often use strong verbs to add extra interest to their writing. So strong verbs should explain the exact action and allow the reader to visualize the action in their head. Remember, verbs are those action words. Ran, walked, sang, danced, all those words that show us that somebody's doing an action. So let's look at some examples. So these are some that I see pretty often that have more specific and exact meanings depending on the context. So instead of saying ate, he ate a sandwich. He gobbled up a sandwich. He snacked on a sandwich. He munched a sandwich. He nibbled on a sandwich. He devoured a sandwich. They all mean he ate it, but they all have totally different meanings. To nibble on a sandwich is totally different from to devour a sandwich. Devour means you were like super, super hungry, you ate it super fast. Nibbled means you're kind of taking little bites at a time. So, depending on what's happening in your story, one of these words might work better than just the word ate. Another example is the word laughed. So she laughed at the joke. Sure. She giggled at the joke. She guffawed at the joke. A guffaw is like a giant, huge laugh. She chuckled at the joke. She smirked at the joke. She smiled at the joke. They all mean laughed. Smile, a little bit different, but same idea. But they all have different, what's called connotations. Connotations are like different meanings depending on the context, depending on how it's being used. If we look, we have the word looked. So instead of saying looked, they glanced out the window. They stared out the window. They gazed out the window. They inspected something out the window. They peeked out the window. They all mean totally different things depending on what's the context. Are they being sneaky? If they're being sneaky, then peeked might be a good word. Are they super, super interested in something? Then gazed or stared might be the way to go. And let's come over to went. Honestly, went has a million bazillion different ones that you could use, but these are just some. So instead of saying they went to, or they went home after school, well, maybe they ran home after school. They drove home after school. They walked home after school. They snuck home after school. Were they supposed to be somewhere else? They traveled home after school. So again, depending on what's happening in your story, one of these words might work better. And here's the big one. The big one is said. People tend to get hung up on the word said a lot, but honestly, there are so many better words to use than said. Replied, whispered, yelled, announced, mentioned. There's honestly a million other ones that you could use. So these are words that I tend to find are overused. There's a ton of other words that you can find that are also overused, but these are just some of the big ones that I see a lot of the time. So consider using some of these other words. They're going to give you more specific. They're going to help your reader visualize things better. So one of your assignments today, this is kind of like a two-part assignment today, is on slide 3 of your new editing phase, narrative writing slides, is to practice using strong verbs. And I included some examples on slide number 2. So instead of saying the dog ate its food quickly, what other word could you use to describe ate? He looked inside the box. Well, come to the list. Is there a better word for looked? If he peeked inside the box, that means something totally different than he stared inside the box, because language is really powerful. She went to her mother after school. Instead of saying went, what other word could we use? The girl said that she lost her shoes. So instead of saying said, what word could we use instead? And Sam got a baseball award last night. So instead of got, what could you say? Honestly, you could change that to a lot of different things. You could say Sam received a baseball award last night. Sam stole a baseball award last night. There's so many other ways that you can say it. So practice using those strong verbs. That's part 1 of your assignment. Part 2 of your assignment is going to be to look at your own writing stories. So I re-included all of my writing stories here. And your job is to go through, look for some of those words that you might want to change, some of those verbs that you might want to change. And you're going to highlight them in red, or you're going to change the color to red. So let me show you what that looks like. So here's my first paragraph from my story. So I said, Mom, are we there yet? I said, well, right off the bat, I see the word said. There's definitely a better word I can use than said. I'm going to change this to complained. Sorry, I thought I was typing, and apparently it wasn't. Complained. And then after I change it, I'm going to come here. So here, where it has an A with a line underneath it, that's how you change the text color. Change it to red so that I can see that you changed your word. I'm going to bold it too, just so you can see it a little bit better. Mom, are we there yet? I complained. We had already been driving for hours, and even though there was room to move around in the RV, I was tired of not being able to go outside. I was having a lot of fun on this trip across the country, but being stuck in an RV for hours made my brain feel like it was melting. We'll be there soon, Mom said. Ugh, there's that said again. I'm going to get that up there. I'm going to change this one to replied. Mom replied. Replied kind of has this attitude of like, things are going to be okay. So Mom replied, I couldn't wait to get to the campsite and finally get out of here. Okay, neat. So I had 2 in this paragraph alone that I could fix. And yours might have more. So that's what we're looking for here. Here's paragraph number 2. We went into the campsite just as the sun was beginning to set. So here's went. So there's a lot of different versions of these words that you can change, but here's just some of the ones that I'm noticing in my own writing. We went, I'm going to change that to we drove into the campsite. Because that's what happened. We were in an RV. We drove into that campsite just as the sun was beginning to set. Even though it was nearly nighttime, the heat of the day still gripped us and made us all feel hot and sticky. Mom dragged her feet as she made her way from the driver's seat to the bed in the back of the RV. As the sun set and darkness took hold of the campsite, I could hear a symphony of a million crickets just outside. Then something in the darkness caught my eye. It was something I had never seen before. So this time, I only really had like one that I wanted to change. Just outside my window, tiny lights flew in the air and then disappeared. I don't like this flew. I don't like the way that sounds. Instead, I'm going to change that to hovered. Tiny lights hovered in the air. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to change it to red. So they hovered in the air and then disappeared. They appeared again. I got my little brother's attention, and we looked out at the small blinking lights. We need to get out here, I said to him. So I probably wouldn't have just said that to him. My mom's gone to bed. I'm going to whisper that to him. That's nice to whisper. I whispered to him. We need to get out there. I whispered to him. So I changed that said to a whispered. We looked to our mom, lightly snoring on her bed. We went lightly to the door. We went lightly to the door? I don't like that. I'm going to change that to snuck. We snuck lightly to the door, because we're trying to be sneaky here. So I'm trying to use better words that show that we're being sneaky. We snuck lightly to the door and began to open the hatch. A squeak. My brother and I looked to our mom. So looked. I don't know if I like that one. I'm actually going to change it to my brother and I glanced at our mom. And then I'm going to highlight that in red. This paragraph has a lot that I can change. So my brother and I glanced at our mom, nervous of what she would think if she saw us leaving the RV without supervision. Her body shifted, but she stayed asleep. We opened the door, and the smell of fresh rain filled our noses as we stepped out. My heart beat faster with the excitement of sneaking out of the RV. As we stepped outside, I could taste the pine trees that surrounded us. The soft glow of the mysterious lights was above us, and I realized that they were fireflies. "They're beautiful," I said to my brother. Oh, I probably wouldn't say said again. I'm going to change that to whispered again. Because that's not how I spell whispered. Because I'm still trying to be sneaky, so I'm trying to speak quietly. So, change that one, change it to red. I whispered to my brother. We stood in the dark. The only light we saw was from the fireflies dancing in the air around us. We stood in the dark with the fireflies for what felt like hours. Then we went back into the RV before our mom woke up. I don't like went. I'm actually going to change this one to tiptoed. And we tiptoed back into the RV. Because again, we're trying to be sneaky here. We're trying to get in without getting caught. Alright, now last paragraph. As I lay down in my bed that night, the butterflies in my stomach danced just as the fireflies outside had. I thought I would be awake all night watching the fireflies from my window. I hadn't even realized I had fallen asleep until my mom woke me up with a soft, "You ready to go on to the next state?" I rubbed my eyes and looked around. In this case, looked. I'm pretty okay with that looked. I could change it to glanced around. I could change it to something else, but I'm going to keep it that one. The fireflies were gone, and the sun was shining in through the glass window. The RV went out of the campsite, and we were out. Or we were off. I'm going to change that went again. I'm going to say pulled out of the campsite, as in like we're pulling the car out. The RV pulled out of the campsite and we were off. As we went away, I don't like that went, that sounds weird. As we went away from the campsite, I'm going to say as we drove away from the campsite. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to highlight it in red. As we drove away from the campsite, I hoped that I would see a million other things that made me just as excited as those little fireflies did that night. So, that's my story. If I come back over here and take a look, I changed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 verbs in here, and I made them stronger. I made the writing stronger. So, your job today is to please complete slide number 2 in your editing phase slides. So that's the page that looks like this. This is strong verbs at the top. After that, in your first drafts of your narrative writing, read through it and look for places that you can put strong verbs. Try to find at least one per paragraph. If you find more than one per paragraph, awesome. I love that. Go for it. And then just make sure you color your new verb in with red, because I'm going to be looking for the red verbs. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. But that is all I have for you, and I'm so excited to see what you come up with. Thanks. Bye, everybody.